right now we're going to do something pretty cool. We're going to do a live taping of the Theory of Content podcast. It is going to be super exciting. How many of you have actually been listening to Theory of Content? Yes, right? I listen to it when I'm in the kitchen all the time. I tell Alexa, play Theory of Content, which my friend
Alexa does that?
I just learned that.
Does that?
Alexa
She can
listens.
play
I tell
it for
Google
you.
Home to do that. I don't know.
Whatever. I do that too, but that's upstairs. So we've got Josh and Amber. Josh is the director of marketing for Alarm Grid, a home security company out of Florida. His content-centric philosophy has propelled his site's success, and it should be a breath of fresh air for anyone who wants to understand how they can build a successful presence online. And then you all know Amber, our lovely co-founder. Lifelong loves include Texas, Mexican food, her British husband, and her 2 boys, Evan and Will. She's also obsessed with helping bloggers create better content and businesses of their dreams. So, give it away, guys.
All right.
All right.
Cool.
Hi, everyone.
Is everybody here? Is everyone ready? Okay. I think we're ready to go too.
Okay.
So we're going to literally do a live showing. We're going to start it out the way we normally do, minus the music if you're a listener. It's good to see that we actually do have a few listeners in here. Maybe a few more of you will start listening. That'd be great. But basically, real simply, we do this show because we love content and we like talking about sort of our philosophy about how to make it. So that's what the show's about. And let's get right into it.
Yeah.
So. Hey everybody, this is Joshua Unseth and you're listening to Theory of Content. I'm here with my co-host,
Amber Bracegirdle.
and today we're actually at the Mediavine conference with a live audience.
Awesome.
We're at the Googleplex, actually, which is kind of cool. So today we're going to actually do a live show, and we're going to kind of go through questions like we normally do. There's going to be a little bit less banter here at the beginning.
Yeah.
And we're going to go question by question. And what I really want to do is I want to run through these questions as fast as we can.
So that we can open it up to the audience.
Exactly. So you guys can actually get up and ask questions sort of about whatever it is you want to, how to run your blog, how to do SEO, how to think about content generally. And so let's get to it.
All right. First section we're going to talk about is strategy. We divided these into sort of topics based on the questions that were asked in the Facebook group. So strategy is where we're starting.
Great.
If you could only choose 1 to 2 SEO strategies to work on first, what would they be?
Okay, so the first thing, we've talked about this a lot of times on the show before. I think that a lot of people really sort of overthink their search engine optimization, their sort of strategies, and we say it all the time. Your blog ain't broke.
Every time.
Every time. Your blog isn't broken. Everyone comes to us, you, me, generally, they'll come and they'll say, my blog isn't producing, isn't getting as much traffic as I would want it. And I think the beauty of blogging is that you really are sort of in charge of your own blog's fate. So I think the number one thing that I generally recommend people work on is just writing more. Yeah. Write more content, which is a frustrating thing to hear, I think, for bloggers.
So in fact, I was talking with someone earlier today that was talking about going back and fixing file names on photos as part of what they wanted to do to target SEO. And I was like, yo, that is such a waste of time.
It's going to be a very time.
Please don't waste your time doing that. That is literally spinning your wheels for something
right.
that is not going to give you.
Well, it's not going to give. There's sort of a. The question is how much effort do you have to put in for the result, right? And I think that a lot of bloggers believe, and we did the site audit last week, sort of how to do a self audit of your site. So that you don't have to pay an SEO to do it, so that you can actually do this yourself and sort of come out with
maybe we made some enemies last week.
Right, and that might be what happened. But so going back and changing the file names of photos is probably not going to net you a whole lot more traffic. Whereas making new content, targeting those new keywords that you'd like to go after, that is absolutely 100% going to be the kind of thing that grows your traffic significantly.
Right.
And that's the thing, a lot of bloggers sort of they focus on sort of the myopic, the small little things that they can do to get a little bit more traffic, when the reality is that there's these opportunities out there that you should go after long before you start caring about things like the file names on your site.
And
right?
I get it, right? As a blogger, I get it. You feel like it can't just be writing more
content. Blog is a garden. It's a beautiful garden. You're trying to curate it.
So he doesn't normally get to see my face, right, when we do this, and that's the face I make a lot of the time. I'm like, what? I know that it's frustrating to hear keep writing content. Like you want actionable things that you think you did wrong a long time ago, and that surely that must be preventing Google from seeing what's good about your site. It's not preventing Google from seeing anything. Google is smart.
Right. Well, kind of.
Well, Google is smart enough to know that if you wrote a post about chocolate cake, but the file name is image 1234567, there's been enough commenting, there's been enough interaction with that post that they still know it's about chocolate cake. And you going back and changing your file name is not going to give them any sort of extra information that they didn't already know.
A little bit, but like not significantly.
Not enough to make a difference. Not for the time that you're spending.
Right, and I think one of the big problems with understanding that your blog isn't broken and that Google's pretty smart about like where to rank you and how to like that they're good at delivering content to searchers, right? I think the frustrating reality of that is that you realize that the only thing really holding your site back is your content, like your future content. You're not writing something right now, and like it's both a blessing and a curse, because it means that like there's no silver bullets. There's just more writing, and that's also beautiful because it means that you're completely in control of getting that traffic. Mm-hmm. So I think moving on to the second thing, I think the second really important thing for people to sort of understand is that you need to stop thinking about SEO as a blogger. I think that a lot of bloggers get really into the weeds. They try to sort of learn everything that like a marketer is going to know. And you're bloggers. You're not marketers. That's not your specialization. Google didn't build its algorithms so that SEOs could just go and manipulate them. They wrote it so that bloggers could rank for things and that writers could rank for things, and that content, that really good content, is delivered to people that are looking for it and searching for it every day, all the time, right? So you don't actually have to like know the SEO that someone who might be working with like a Fortune 500 company might know. You can just write, and for the most part, that's going to be enough. There are some cases when sites are broken.
Yeah.
But those are rare. We rarely
saw that with Julie, but it had been fixed long before we looked at it.
Right, and the reason we knew that it was broken is because we were actually looking at the analytics, and there was this like large dip. It was like fine dip, and then like a few months a few months of a flat line, and then and we were able to kind of diagnose that and figure out what happened during that period. But that's rare.
Right, and you know what was important about that, and this is something Eric is kind of passionate about too, is it wasn't obvious to Julie Blanner. Sorry to call you out, Julie. It wasn't obvious to her.
She was on the show. There's a whole episode named after her.
Yes.
So.
It wasn't obvious to her because she was looking day by day, right? But the first thing Josh did was zoom out and look at the year. And when he looked at the year, it was just like I was sitting next. That was a show that we actually recorded together when I was in Florida. And when you looked at it, like as someone who was sitting next to him, and I looked at the graph, I was like, holy moly, what happened? And she was able to pinpoint exactly the change that she made on her site, and when it was fixed, she could also pinpoint a change.
Right. Well, it's the thing. We like what happened on July 12th, right? And she goes back at her emails and looks. She's like, well, that's the date that I did this with my site, and it was significant. And then what happened on November 3rd, and this is that's the date I did X, Y, and Z. So like, if you zoom out like that in your analytics, sometimes you can kind of diagnose things, but it's rare.
Yeah.
It's rare that there's something actually wrong with your site.
Yeah.
So what's the next question we got?
How can we improve the chance of getting to the rank 0 spot, that's also called position 0, where Google shows content snippets?
Oh, that's a great question.
Yeah.
So there's if you guys have looked at search, a lot of times you're going to search, particularly questions, right?
Yeah.
Like how do I do X? There's a spot above all of the other things that we call the position 0. And it generally has an answer in it. It's a little box. I'm sure you've seen it. Google what is Brad Pitt's age? It's going to show up. I don't actually, how old is Brad Pitt? I don't know.
53.
53. I knew you'd know that. So that's a position 0 box, and it takes up an enormous amount of space at the top, and it gets a ton of clicks. It's absolutely wonderful. And the beauty of it is that Google will actually select from lots and lots of articles. So like you could be in that top 10, you could be the 8th position, and then Google will reward you by giving you that top zero position spot. And
Because you answered the question.
Right, because you answered the question and they're trying to deliver that content. So you actually get 2 spots on that page, which is really wonderful. So the way that I generally, I go after the zero position all the time. And the way that I do that is basically, I think of writing as like, you have surface area and you have like this canvas and you're basically trying to like make it so that you give enough surface area that Google finds the answer written well inside of your post. Mm-hmm. And so the way that I do that is I make posts very clear and concise. This is one of the few times that I do write for Google. But the result of writing for Google in these cases is that it's actually better for people. So for example, if someone wants to, have some sort of how-to, the way that I structure those is I have a small paragraph at the beginning that kind of fully answers a question, but not fully, but like sort of gives a quick answer to the question. And then if it's a how-to, I have steps. And I do like a full step by step, and Google actually will often grab the first sentence from each of those steps, and they're going to display them in that zero position, which is amazing. But basically, I just try to give Google as much surface area as possible. I try to answer the question clearly and concisely. I take a lot of care of like spelling and grammar. And that's how I go after those first positions.
Right. I mean, we do the same thing on Food Fanatic. I give this example all the time, probably because it's the only one I've had time to do in the last year.
Parboil?
The parboil.
Parboil.
Eric says to me, yo, we're ranking pretty well for how to parboil, even though our post was about how to parboil potatoes. But we were ranking like 6th on the page for how to parboil. And so we were like, all right, we're going to go after this. And so Megan and I, who is my assistant editor, as well as our conference planner, got together one day because we live close to each other, and we created videos. We parboiled sweet potatoes and mixed vegetables and rice,
everything.
all the things, right? And we ended up with like 8 articles, like 8 videos that I then went and created articles for. And they weren't massively different from each other. I structured them the same way. I sort of put a narrative at the beginning, like the example I love is the carrots one, because you didn't know that the whole thing that carrots are good for your eyes. It's a myth that was put out during World War II to confuse Germans about radar. Like, that's really true. And so I wrote like the first, Food Fanatic, guys, like it's a recipe site, but I wrote the entire post about like the fact that that's a thing. But then I also provided information about how to parboil carrots. And in that, I then linked around to all of the other parboil posts that we had and did the same thing in every single parboil post we had. And within a couple of weeks, we had seen a 20% increase in search around parboil because we had raised in rankings on the initial term, but we were also starting to capture all of the things about parboiling, all those other things, right? Especially how to parboil rice. Apparently preppers are real big into that, like doomsday preppers. So we started capturing all of that, which was hysterical.
That's the Food Fanatic market for the most part.
It really
That's
is.
your demographic.
It really is.
And that, I think that's absolutely great because you had no idea. So
right,
like
we
you're
had
grabbing
no idea.
that.
And we did the same thing with Christina Lane, right? Where are you, Christina? Raise your hand.
Right there.
Yes. So when we had Christina on the podcast, Josh was looking at her stuff, and it was right before Valentine's Day, and he was like, yo, write a bunch of stuff about romantic dinners for 2. Like, keep writing about it. Did it work?
Absolutely, it worked. Great.
Yeah, and it's all about providing the surface area to Google to say, hey, I'm an expert in this.
And here's the thing with the zero position. It's usually provided by, like Google will often provide it particularly for questions.
Yeah.
And you can pull a lot of that stuff out of your Google Analytics. You actually go in there and you can see what people have searched for. That you could put the word "how to," and it will filter all of the keywords that people have come to your site on using a how-to question.
Yeah.
Now, like if you're a small blog, you're not going to get a lot of stuff, but like just answer those questions.
Keep
Answer
answering them.
And you're going to get more and
doing it.
more and more. It might be 1 a week or 2 a week or 5 a week. But you answer those questions, eventually you're going to have a whole host of those. So, I mean, going after those questions is also one of the ways that you can really build that position zero. And I generally don't advocate going after a single keyword. I think that like bloggers need to be less ardent about going after single keywords and more ardent about going after like swaths of keywords, looking for like 50 keywords they can write for. Because you know what? Like whether you get the position 0 or the position 1, it's quasi-random. You don't have a whole lot of control of that. It's a bunch of like monkeys in a computer that make that decision, and there's not like a lot of things that you can do to guarantee that.
Josh,
right?
we're in the monkey's living room.
Well, that's fine. They know that. They built the monkeys. So that's the beautiful thing about it is like if you go after 50, some of them are going to end up in the 1 position, some are going to end up in the 2 position, some are going to end up in the 3, and some are going to end up in the 10 position.
And
it's fine.
Yeah, and I'll say this too, don't focus on the day by day, right? Like some people, I've gotten emails where people are like, oh my gosh, I was 2 yesterday, today I'm 5, what did I do wrong? Nothing, and I guarantee you that—
The monkeys moved you.
Yeah.
So there you go.
And it's very likely that in a few days, they're gonna do something else, they're gonna re-index things again.
And you're not going to be in search at all.
Don't say that.
Just kidding. Let's go on to the next one. All right, so we're going to look at site structure.
Yeah, so now we're gonna move on to site structure. How does site structure play into SEO?
So we've done a couple of shows about this too. There's a lot of questions about like where, like how you should make your site, sort of how you should build it, like the architecture of it. Site structure has a little bit to do with SEO. It has a lot to do with like how Google actually shows and displays your site in search, particularly for like branded searches, like if someone's searching your name specifically. You know, I generally advocate being very, very specific about particularly your navigation bar, really making sort of very strategic and editorial decisions about where you're directing your traffic. So make sure that people are getting to the pages that are popular from the home page, making those pages not too far from the home page. Like you want 1, maybe 2 clicks to some of those more popular pages, getting them to landing pages, getting your users to behave in the way that you want them to behave.
Yeah.
So and the way what happens there is Google actually will, like sometimes for branded searches, pull out some of those links, and you know, instead of just that top little search, they're going to give you that, and then there's like 5 or 6 link spots below it that they're going to give you. But how does it play into SEO generally? I mean, like you think about it, Google cares a lot about links, and a lot less than they used to, but they still care about links. And part of those links, part of that link profile includes the links on your own site. So you want things that you want to rank for, you know, those sort of like shorter keywords, those harder to rank ones. You want them to be the things that you're linking to on Google so that you can tell Google, these are the most important pages. These are the things that indicate what my site is most about. Right. Google, Bing, Yahoo, whatever it is that you're ranking for. And they're going to grab those, and they're going to like use those links on your site as part of the metric for you know, figuring out what you rank for.
And how do you do that?
How do you do it? You just, you figure out very specific, even in text. So like you do that like in the nav bar. For one.
Like breadcrumbs?
Yeah.
Right, does everybody understand what breadcrumbs are? Okay, cool.
Yeah, so yeah, you can do it, the breadcrumbs.
No, I don't mean the food.
I do.
No?
I'm very hungry. All the time, but like breadcrumbs are generally the thing at the top of your site where like you have a link and then you have like is that a greater than sign? I'm not great at math. Better at eating breadcrumbs. But like a greater than sign and then like another thing. It's like categorical. So you're gonna have like and then at the very end you have the title of the post.
And it gets its name from Hansel and Gretel, right? The way that someone is clicking through your site and they can get back to where they were. So for example, if they came into your site on the slow cooker category page, but then they clicked onto something, they could actually just click back on the slow cooker category at the top of the post.
It allows for easy navigation. It allows for Google to kind of like, you know, filter through your site very easily. It makes it wonderful for an experience as a searcher. Another thing you can do is use proper markup.
Right.
So like in the code of your site, we're not all coders, and I don't expect everyone to know exactly how to do this, and I don't think, you know, Google does necessarily either. But there's a thing called schema.org, or schema. Schema.org is the site where like a lot of the schema is articulated. But schema basically gives you a template to show Google what elements of your site are. So you can tell it, hey, Google, this is where the recipe is. Hey, Google, this is where my content is. Hey, Google, this is like a, you know, product, and it's a description of the product, and these are comments.
Right, and to put this in perspective for Mediavine, like you'll hear us say, don't use post builders, please, because our ads use these bits of markup to know where to go, right? And so in content, if you're using a post builder, a lot of times it'll not categorize things the right way, and then your ads don't serve, which is no bueno for your pocketbook.
Yeah. And I mean, the final thing I think is like a lot of you are using recipe cards because you're food bloggers. A lot of you are not food bloggers, but I think a large portion of the people in here are. Those recipe cards, generally, the best ones are going to be properly marked up in schema.
Yeah.
And the beauty of that is, again, you're telling Google, these are, you know, this is where my recipe content is. And when Google's looking for recipe content, it's going to pull that stuff right out of there. And you might even get that 0 spot back to that question.
Yeah.
But like with Mediavine, as they're doing the recipe card, as they're doing like other kinds of cards. That's the purpose of those cards, is to like mark up your site properly to make sure that Google and any other search engine knows exactly what's in that little section on your site.
Right. So example, there are some craft bloggers in the room that use recipe cards because they want to provide printable things for their readers, but they're actually marking up craft items, like the things that you need for the craft,
as food items.
And Google's like, no,
Google don't
do
eat
that. Yeah, don't do that. So you can actually hurt your site by doing that.
I think Google is actually pretty good about parsing that stuff. So like it grabs it, it looks at it, says, well, these ain't recipes, right? So Google, it used to be that people would do that to like trick Google into giving them a little picture. And Google's gotten pretty good about knowing that these things aren't recipes. So like for the most part, it's actually not going to hurt your site, but it's not like it's a really bad idea for the long term. I think what you really want to do is wait and until something that like actually has good markup comes along, so that you can actually utilize a lot of the features that Google wants you to utilize for those posts.
Right.
So in a case of recipes, that means that you get a little picture. That means that you get Google kind of parses them in a little bit different way.
Right.
So.
Moving on. Should photos all have different alt tags?
Yes. Moving on. No. So if you're. For all of you, alt tags are a beautiful attribute. Alt tags actually help people that are like disabled come to your site and kind of read things. It's the idea is alt tag is alternative, right, to an image. Right. So for example,
and Eric talked about, not our Eric, but Eric from Google talked about this morning.
And like if you think about it, the alt tag should replace can replace the image. Close your eyes and think about what's on that page, right? That's like how someone who's maybe blind coming to your site is going to see that. Like what is their experience with your content, right? And that's something to care about. Like it's a small portion of the population, but if you think about it, Google's monkeys, if you will, that's what they are. They're experiencing your content that way. They're going there as a person. They're going there trying to figure out what everything is about, and they're doing it blindly. They're trying to figure out exactly what everything's about, and alt tags really help them.
Robots can't see images.
And the beauty of it too is that like they use the alt text, so you can actually link to people on images, and that alt text is going to be used as the text that you're linking to them with if you do that, which is beautiful because you can actually choose the keywords and to link people in images. I don't generally recommend that people link in images, but that's something you can actually do, and it's a really cool option because there are times when it's appropriate.
Right.
All right. Next.
How do you find the best long tail keywords?
Oh, that's a good question.
Man, that's a loaded one.
Wow. So, I mean, my favorite tool is Webmaster Tools generally for bloggers because there's a lot of keywords in there, right? And what is it? It's free.
It's free.
It's free. Do you guys raise your hand if you like free? That's about 50% of the room. So, if you like free tools that are phenomenal, Google's Webmaster Tools is, and I'm not saying this just because we're at the Googleplex. It's actually a phenomenally built tool. It grabs Google doesn't show you keywords anymore. They used to. But they took all of the search, and now it's behind SSL. It's behind sort of this, it's difficult for you to access what people are searching individually. It used to always be in your analytics. But now with Webmaster Tools, they actually do this, and they take your like top 900 or 1,000 keywords, and you can go through them and take a look at the opportunities that you're missing. And that's both long tail and short tail keywords. So if you don't know what long tail is, if you look at how keywords work, you have this like huge amount of traffic for like short keywords, like books, right? And then as you go along, like as you look at search, longer and longer, you have this long tail in search, so it like follows this sort of distribution, this long tail, and in this first section, there's a ton of traffic for those like little keywords. In the longer tail, there's a ton of traffic, way more than is in this little first part, way more over here. But it's for keywords that people are searching like one time. Those are those like keywords that like you write a whole sentence into Google, or like you put in like a paragraph and you're trying to like search for something.
Right.
You're the only one searching that month, right? So Google doesn't have like a lot of data to display, and they're doing their best. But that's where a majority of search is in those long, sort of obscure keywords. And you can rank for those, but what you're looking for, you're basically trying to like, put in content that's really good that ranks for, keywords all along that sort of spectrum. Like there's maybe 1 million people searching for things that don't have other people searching those keywords also for. And if you can rank for all of those, that's 1 million hits that you get, but you can't exactly measure those in tools. Because if you were to look in like a Webmaster tool or any tool generally, you're gonna find, you're not gonna see them because they're like one search, right? but that's one search about one specific subject.
Right.
So,
I'll give an example.
Yeah,
So
please.
there's chocolate cake, right? Or there's the best chocolate cake,
Mm-hmm.
right? The best chocolate cake is a long tail keyword. So, and there's a blogger in this room that ranks really, really well for that. And so that she targets that, and she writes lots of stuff about chocolate cakes.
Right.
And it doesn't mean she has to write every post about the best chocolate cake, but she continues to write supporting content around that.
right, and you're gonna find that if you rank well for those, like over time, what happens is those things get linked to, they get searched, they get traffic. Google likes them. They find out that people like your blog, and you're gonna start ranking better for those keywords that are more and more difficult to rank for in that like little front part of the search graph.
So cake,
Cake, generally, I would love to
Yeah.
rank for cake.
right?
I just love to eat cake. That's why I love food bloggers. They feed me. That's why I come. All right, what's the next one?
Okay.
Oh, is there more? There is more. Let's do that. Sorry. So
We're good at this, guys.
yeah, right.
Promise.
Well, we haven't done it with a PowerPoint. For the most part, usually we have like a list of notes. So this is kind of cool. Yeah. So actually, I think that's it.
Okay,
That's
cool.
good. Okay, moving on.
Tools. Lots of questions about tools.
Cool.
Would love an SEO-friendly template or guide for a typical blog post.
Okay, so this is a great question, but it's better for a blogger like Amber to answer. I think that you guys actually have one of these on the Mediavine site.
So does everybody know that Mediavine has a blog? Yeah? So there is actually an infographic, a checklist on our blog. If you go to mediavine.com, it's mediavine.com/the-ultimate-easy-SEO-checklist. Or just go to the blog and search for SEO checklist. It will come up. And we sort of created that for you guys, for anyone to use. It doesn't matter who you're monetizing with, because we want you to have those tips. But yeah, I mean.
Right, and I think a lot of you use like tools in your, like, I mean, I know a lot of you have WordPress. A lot of you use tools like Yoast and stuff like that. I know there's a lot of Yoast questions, so like we'll wait till the end, but like, there's a lot of really phenomenal things that you can do in a post to make sure that you're ranking, and I think that a lot of you guys are going to be like overly concerned with things like putting in keywords, right? Sticking as many times as you can the word turkey into your post, and that's not the best idea. So if you can do things that like really optimize your post, give it again as much surface area as you can, write for people. Google's going to be pretty good about figuring out where it goes. So I think that's actually a great little checklist. And then when we get to the questions here, and you guys have like questions about Yoast or anything else, we'll make sure to kind of walk you through maybe some of the things like what does Yoast mean when it shows a yellow light on this or something like that.
Yeah.
So those are great. Let's go to the next. Speaking of, I forgot about that.
Did you really?
Yeah, I did.
He got so excited about that
I like this
question
one.
like 3 times last night. I was like, you're tired.
So sorry.
Is Yoast truly the god of SEO?
Yes. No. So you know what? Yoast is a phenomenal WordPress plugin. I don't think that there's a better one out there right now. It gives you a lot of amazing. You know what I like about it is that you don't have to know anything about SEO, and you can kind of follow the Yoast rubric. And if you like do everything Yoast tells you to do, you're going to be pretty good.
Yeah.
It falls short in some places. Like I think that like a lot, like it's not. For example, Google's a dynamic algorithm. Google's algorithm is dynamic, and things change. And Yoast doesn't change right away with it. So for example, right now, about a month ago, frankly,
Yeah.
Google changed the way that it displays meta descriptions. It used to be that you'd have about 150 to 160 characters.
Right. Now it's close to 300.
300's well, they say that there's no upper end to it,
Oh.
but there's studies saying that basically 300 is about where they're seeing a lot of people get cut off. And you can see that. Google almost anything for your site, and you're going to see some people that have like short little descriptions. You probably have short little descriptions because you've all been like following those rules. And you're going to see then a couple people who didn't follow any instructions, and for Google's pulling random text out of their page, and they have big long posts in Google search. And that's because Google expanded the number of descriptions, the number of keywords, or like number of characters that they're displaying in those descriptions. So Yoast is going to show you a yellow light on that stuff. And frankly, I mean, just ignore it right now because they're gonna update it.
Right.
But there's a new thing in Google. Google's now showing longer descriptions. So like you should change because you can get more real estate on that page. So yeah, Yoast is the best plugin, but you guys got to realize, I think, that like it's a plugin, which means that it's got some faults. And
It's fallible.
It's fallible, yeah. And knowing the rules and sort of understanding like what each of the elements within Yoast mean, that's going to like give you a better understanding of maybe when to break the rules
Right.
that Yoast is telling you that you're breaking.
Right. I mean, at the end of the day, I say this all the time when bloggers ask me about it. And at the end of the day, Yoast is a checklist, right? Like it's a pretty plugin with red, yellow, and green lights that someone has taken a Someone has taken a checklist and turned it into a plugin, and that's what it is. And it analyzes the data that it has, which is your blog post, based against a set of rules. And the set of rules is only as current as the last time Yoast updated, right?
And here's the other thing. I think that like a lot of people think that SEO is some sort of like Moses goes to the top of Mount Sinai and the Lord Google comes down to him and says like, Moses, here are the rules. And then we come down and we like, hey guys, here they are, here are the rules. That's not really how SEO works. SEO generally works by like people testing things. And well, yeah, you know, the people testing things and people trying things and people like running regressions and seeing what works best. So there's a lot of opinions. Right. In a lot of these areas.
A lot of people seem to think that Yoast has a direct line to Google, and they don't. They just test a lot of stuff.
Right. If someone calls them like, "Hey, Yoast, how you doing? We're changing the algorithm today." That doesn't happen.
No. That doesn't happen. They're just testing stuff. It's the same with SEMrush. They're testing stuff all the time, so they don't always get it right. Okay, and I think that's something that, you know, if you're paying $100 a month for SEMrush, you expect that they're always going to get it right, but no one has insight into Google.
Except me. Next slide.
Cool. Content.
All right.
Is it okay to have multiple posts with the same or similar keywords?
That's a good one. Yeah, it is. Google's going to do what Google does. They're going to try to figure out when someone searches for something, what's the best thing for them. But like, you can build a lot of supporting content on a site. Like I said, like part of the link graph, part of like Google trying to figure out what is important is going to be the links that you give yourself. And the beauty of those links is that they're 100% editorial. You're giving yourself links. You're telling Google exactly what it is that you think is important. So you can give Google those signals. Google's not going to like care that much. They're going to like decide on their own anyways. But you can tell Google as best as you can which one you want to rank for which keywords. And you can have a bunch of supporting content around it. The best example is that parboil one that we were talking about earlier. You guys have like
You never knew you wanted to parboil so much in your life.
No, you didn't. Well, yeah, like you have 5, 6, 7 posts about parboiling, right?
Mm-hmm. No, we have like 8.
Okay, 8 posts, fine. all in support of this one other parboiling post, but you know what happens is those 7 other posts, like we talked about the long tail keywords, they're ranking for things that you didn't expect.
No.
And for people that have bunkers in their backyards.
Right.
But like, but yeah, they're ranking for all sorts of things that you didn't expect. And that's sort of how you do that is like you build, the way that I generally do content is I think of like a keyword I want, or I go after like a category of keywords, sort of like sort of a broad umbrella. The idea of this like long tail strategy, right? I go after this like maybe category, and then I build content around it. So a really good example of that is we have an alarm site, alarmgrid.com. What do I do on my site? I have a lot of FAQs and stuff like that, but that doesn't make us any money.
Right.
We want people to buy product, and we want people to, sign up for monitorings. If any of you guys need monitoring, you can go to the site right now. No, but like that's what we want. So like we build a lot of supporting content, right? And when someone Googles, like, for example, we sell a Lyric security system. When someone Googles Lyric security system, we want to get them to the product page as quickly as possible. And so I'm trying to send Google as much signal, as much information as I possibly can that is the page that we want a majority of people to go on. And Google does a really good job of that. When someone searches Lyric security system, they get to the product page. Now, on the other hand, when someone says, how do I arm my system? They're going to get to a page that we have that's specifically that question, because that's actually what that person's searching for, in spite of all the links that I have to Lyric, right? Because Google's trying to deliver the content that answers the question that user is going to be asking. But Google does that algorithmically. They do an amazing job of it, and you can actually, like I said, link on your site, link to those pages internally that you want to show up for specific keywords and give Google kind of those like ranking
Right.
signals.
I mean, back to tools, guys, personally, this is just Amber spitballing, but I've said for years, like, ask yourself what you would type into Google. Like, before you do anything else, what would I type into Google to get to this post? And if you don't have something on your site that either answers that question or finds that kind of content, write it.
Oh yeah. And often when you're doing a question, you'll see, like, we talk about this a lot. Like, underneath the question, there's maybe a post or two. And then there's like this big, long list of questions that Google says other searchers who are looking for this also have looked for.
People may also ask.
Yeah, people may also ask. And then it's got a list. And you can actually expand that list. You can grow it.
Right
and you can kind of take a look at what other people are searching for. And you can write those posts. And you know what's beautiful about it is those are posts that are, again, similar, even the same keywords that you're looking at right there. But they're different enough that Google has associations with like the search that you're currently on. And you can do a lot of that content because that's supporting content for the post that you're trying to rank for.
Right.
So that's beautiful. You're going to be like basically the one-stop shop for this particular keyword, this entire topic. And that's beautiful because like if you you can do. I've heard a lot of bloggers say that you don't want to do 2 posts on the same thing because you're vitiating your ability to rank for one of them. And that isn't true at all. Google's going to pick from the best one, but there are times like even on Alarm Grid where we'll rank for the first like top 6, 7, 8 times. We'll be ranking for one kind of keyword because like we have the best content for all 8 positions, and that's not something Google frowns upon, especially if you're actually producing new good content.
Right. I think that's a big myth in the blogging world for sure.
All right. So I think, is that everything?
I think so.
Okay. So like, if you guys can line up at the microphone, I would love to get 100 people deep. As many people as have questions. I want you guys to line up at the microphone, go up there and just ask. Because we can talk about anything for like 3 hours. So whether it's SEO or not, maybe how to cook things. I actually have no idea. Springform pan questions on this side.
We'll go back and forth. Go for it.
All right. So our blog is pretty niche, and we want to try to expand a little bit to embrace other ways of getting traffic.
Cool.
What's a good way to go out and try to expand your niche, organically without really diluting your brand?
So what's your blog?
My blog is gastronomblog.com.
Okay.
Cocktail blogs.
It's a cocktail blog, and what are you trying to expand into?
We kind of want to do some more like travel, but based off of stuff that is like go to a winery or something like that and expand that in our niche. But at the same time, we hear people here that are talking about find niche partners to work with.
Right.
We're kind of it.
Right.
So it's kind of one of those weird things. I mean, our partners are like liquor.com, which is
Cool. That's
Right.
that's a big
Yeah,
partner.
Although there's another cocktail blogger here, for sure.
Yeah, there are.
Lisa, where are you? Raise your hand. Oh, she just walked. Awesome.
She's not
Thanks,
here now.
Lisa.
So I mean, okay, so that's great. I mean, like, I don't know how much of an expansion that is, right? That's essentially sort of in the same niche. And the beauty is, that I imagine you've written a lot of cocktail content previous to trying to like go off and do this,
tons,
traveling adventure. Which is beautiful because you can actually leverage that old content into the new content, right? You're going to be doing these travel blogs. You can use all of the stuff that you've got previous to enhance what you're going to do in the future. This isn't like I think of content particularly with regard to like your subject area as sort of like this like circle of influence you have, right? And you can either when people say that they're like doing a different niche or they're going over here, like sometimes what they mean is that they're like their subject matter is this, and they're going to start writing about this thing that's way over here. And generally, the better way to do it is like when your subject matter is this big, this little circle, you kind of just expand it slowly, and you now have like eventually you get so big that even this over here is something you're covering, but you iterated there, right? You got there by like expanding sort of your subject matter expertise, and that's what it sounds like you're doing. Is like you have right now you've been doing sort of niche cocktails, and what you're going to start doing is like niche cocktails with a travel element. And the beauty of that is that you have all this content that you can leverage. So what I would say is like if you're doing it that way, you don't have to change much. What I would do is I would expand and like sort of use the old content to like really enhance the travel section of the site. and then leverage that old content to continue doing new great content, because you've probably got tons of links, have a great way of, a great ability to rank for a lot of these cocktails. You've already told Google that you're an expert in a lot of the cocktail stuff.
So like, for example, let's say you wanted to find the best old fashioned in New Orleans, right? Write a post, the best old fashioned in New Orleans, but link to every old fashioned recipe that you've got on your site. You're enhancing that content, but you're also answering a question that's probably Googled occasionally.
Pretty often, yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you.
No problem.
Hey there. I understand that you said don't go back, that it's not worthwhile to go back and change my old files, picture files that are IMG underscore
Yep.
22 whatever.
We've all been there, don't worry.
Yeah. But what about those also don't have alt tags? Is it worthwhile to add those alt tags?
It depends on the picture. Alt tags, alt tags are easy, right? The beauty of an alt tag is that it doesn't change the file, and it's a much better ranking signal for Google than your image name. And if you don't believe me, just go to YouTube and see how they title their videos in the URL, right? YouTube.com/ and then what is it? Like a random set of letters and numbers, right? Like Google, like the URL matters, but it doesn't matter as much as like the written content. And the alt tag is a great signal for Google. So if you rank really well in images and you have some images that you want to go back and do some alt text to, that's a pretty low investment. I wouldn't like discourage anybody from doing that.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Just don't spend hours and hours on it. Instead, write new content.
15-year-old who wants to earn some money.
There you go.
Pay your 15-year-old.
Hire
That's
your
perfect.
kids for sure. Elizabeth?
Hi, so based on this morning's SEO thing, I Googled site, my site. And after the first couple that were like my about and recipes, I was a little bit horrified to see totally random, low performing posts from my site ranked, displaying on the first page above things that have a lot of 5-star reviews. And so I wondered, does it matter? Like, what does that mean for Google? Does that mean those are the things they think are most important on my site? And if that's true, how should I fix it so that my best performing stuff shows up first?
So you're like site : your website, your URL.
Right,
And then
if that's what Google sees as my site, are those things on page 1 that are really old, bad recipes?
So it's
What does that mean?
it's not a perfect correlation between like what Google thinks is important and like what they're ranking there, but it's not terrible as a correlation either. So I would probably go to your site and figure out why are they seeing that as a big signal for ranking.
And how do you do that?
Well, so like you're gonna. Right. What you can do, you can use some tools like Open Site Explorer, figure out where links are coming from.
Sorry, what was that?
OpenSiteExplorer.com. It's actually an SEO Moz, I guess, tool, and it's crawled. It's going to show you where links are coming from, and it may be that you've linked to it 100 times on your site and not realized it. Right. It may be that you have
somebody else big.
right, or someone big,
time ago.
In which case, fine. Like, not much you're going to do about that. You're going to take that link and you're going to be very happy about it. But you might have.
So then just go update it.
Yeah, and you might also find that you've linked to it on like a page that's like on the home page or like really close to the home page. Like maybe you have a link to it in your about page that you forgot about, and those are going to be that's maybe you want to enhance another page instead of that page. So if there's stuff that you're getting a lot of traffic to. You can kind of update those links and you can move things around. But like that's not going to, that doing that like site : recipe or site : your URL and then recipes. It's going to show you the stuff on your site. It's not going to necessarily be a great indicator of like what Google is going to rank when someone searches maybe a short tail keyword on your site.
And remember that site : domain name. Nobody's doing that but you.
Right, I just didn't know if it was a big indicator of anything.
I don't think so.
Not hugely. I mean, like it's everything's a little bit hidden with Google, right? You can't see the number that they're giving that page. There's some sort of number, and you're just sort of seeing the articulation of that number in the metrics. Like these are the ones that are winning the race for this search, but that doesn't mean that those are the ones that are going to win the race for like a completely different search, right? So Google, for some reason, likes that one when you rank on your site. I don't know why. You can go ahead and kind of like explore your site and try to figure out why. But I wouldn't spend too much time doing that. Generally, like it's not a great indicator of like where it's going to rank for like really relevant searches.
Cool, thank you.
No problem.
Hi. So my question is not SEO related. It is WordPress 5.0. Can we talk about it a little bit? Because I'm panicking.
We can try.
Can we? I mean, everything I'm reading says it might break all the things, and I don't want it to do that.
So you're afraid of upgrading your WordPress?
I mean, I'm not afraid of upgrading my WordPress in a global sense, just in a specific.
Gutenberg sense?
Thank you.
So I'm not entirely sure what the concern is, because like I don't run a WordPress blog, but I can tell you that like generally for these blogs, if it's a security update, generally you're going to probably want to get security updates.
I mean,
this is a
Gutenberg's kind of changing a lot of stuff. Probably our developers are better folks to ask about that. Seth, later. Cocktail party.
But real simply, that's true. Like I think you should ask them. But like real simply, like you can wait a little while until the plugins catch up to the version. You can check. Like you can stay on the older version of WordPress for a little while. It's not going to kill you.
Yeah, and
You're saying no?
There's a plugin that you can install that's done some WordPress theme to keep the classic editor. So if you want
okay.
You want to come up to the microphone real quick so we can hear you. We're going to have a Mediavine developer give you the answer.
Update your site. We don't want any hacks because that's not fun. But there is a plugin that you can install that is done by the WordPress team that will keep the classic editor and run that until other things have started to support Gutenberg, and then you'll be able to turn it off and use Gutenberg from then on.
Do you remember
Perfect.
what it's called?
It's like classic editor, if I remember correctly. It is posted in the Facebook group. I can look it up and find out what it is again.
Okay, we'll post it in the conference Facebook group later.
Yep.
Yeah, in general, like WordPress, so here's the thing is WordPress is literally the largest CMS, content management system in the world, right? They don't want to lose that. So they're not going to break sites indefinitely, or they're not going to break sites so that they suddenly lose all their ranking.
Right. And if you're using standard plugins, those plugins will catch up pretty quickly. So.
Yeah.
And it will not, from all the tests that I've done and from what everyone else has seen, when you switch to 5.0, your editor is going to change, but any content you've already written is not going to be affected. It's all going to stay the same, so you don't have to worry about your site just breaking spontaneously.
Awesome.
It'll still work.
Thank goodness.
You just might
for
have
Seth.
to learn how to type in content all over.
Perfect. Perfect. So there you go.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean,
Thank you,
like
Seth.
I would listen to the Mediavine developer over me on upgrades. So. So you're saying if you're worried about it, you can use Frontenberg.
Frontenberg.
And it gives you, it shows you what it would look like when you upgrade? Okay, very cool. So, I mean, WordPress is not something that I'm super, I mean, I know WordPress, but I'm not super.
You're on EricPress, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm not actually on EricPress.
Oh, you're not? Okay.
But like, yeah, I use WordPress occasionally, but I'm not a blogger every day. So like, I'm not familiar necessarily with like the changes that are going on right now technically.
Right.
But yeah.
Wait, nope, go ahead.
Okay. So what's the proper page speed for food blogs, especially like
1,000,000 miles an hour.
like
Not kidding.
especially because like with all the photos and everything.
Do you mean
how many
like page
segments?
speed ins? So here's the deal. Especially if you're using Mediavine for your ads, you want to be careful about which page speed tester you're using.
Okay.
We really only pay attention to the two that Google themselves recommend, which are their page speed insights, and I think it's webpagetest.org. And the reason that we say that is that every other page tester we've tried, Pingdom, GTmetrix, etc., what they do is when they test your speed, they're loading from the top to the bottom, okay? And they're doing it just all at once. Mediavine's ads don't run that way, right? We lazy load everything below the fold, and so those ads don't exist in the first byte load time, which is what Google pays attention to for their ranking signal. And we do that on purpose so that your sites are nice and fast for how Google's looking at them. And so a lot of times people will email us. This is like a huge support question for us, right? All the time. We get emails all the time. My site speed is terrible on Pingdom. Yeah, we get that. It's because you know
Designed that way.
your content is long enough that you have 8 ads, and Pingdom just tried to load all 8 ads in your content at once, and that is not how Mediavine loads your ads. So pay attention to page speed insights. 85 or above is what you want. Webpagetest.org, you're looking for A's and B's, I think. What's up?
Eric wants to say something.
Eric wants to say something.
This is Eric's favorite subject, so.
I love page speed, so I'm going to hop in here. So yeah, if you're using webpagetest.org, there is a speed index, which is showing you how quickly that first screen view loaded. You're looking for a 4,000 or less on a mobile. You can choose a setting on what device type you're testing, and that would be a 3G mobile.
3G
Perfect.
mobile, 4,000 or less.
And that goes to like making your site like mobile first. Like
Yeah.
I think that's something that it can't be understated. You need to really have a mobile first approach to your sites because Google has a mobile first approach to search now.
Yeah.
So you need to care about that. And yeah, I mean that's perfect. Thank you.
And what about the loading time? Also the same for a food blog.
So you're looking for the loading time, the first byte load time, which is what Eric was talking about, the 4,000 or less. You're not looking for actual number of seconds, but I mean, obviously, the less time, the better. But you need to be looking at a site that is taking your actual first byte load time, which is what Google cares about.
Right. And in part, you want to there's a lot that you can't control in when it comes to website speed, particularly if you're running ads. So you need to make sure that your site's behind a CDN. You need to make sure that you're doing everything that you can
Backup.
to deliver a content delivery network.
There you go.
So and there's actually a lot of good WordPress WordPress plugins. What WordPress plugin would you recommend for that, or what do you guys use?
Well, we use Fastly, which is the same one that Twitter uses. It's $11 million, so I don't recommend it for a blogger that.
But what I mean, we have a bunch of bloggers here. So I mean, here, how many of you guys have CDNs?
So Cloudflare is a popular one. Please don't enable what the heck's that thing called? Rocket Loader. Don't enable that, please. It will break your ads and all your money. But yeah, Cloudflare is usually free through a lot of hosts, so it can be a good one to enable. Sometimes you want to work with a tech person to set it up properly, or you can ask your host, you can pay like a one-time fee, or you can work with a managed host like Agathon or OrangeGeek to have them set it up properly.
Okay, we're running out of time.
Yep.
So let's go quick.
Nora?
Okay, so just before you were talking about what to do if Google thinks some content you really don't like is important on your site.
Mm-hmm.
You said, Amber, you could update it. Mm-hmm. So I'm interested, what's your take on updating content? Because there is the belief going around in the Wild Wide Web that you should update very slowly. So you would first do photos and then wait for 8 weeks, and then you would do text and wait for 8 weeks, and then you would...
Google does not care.
Google's not a horse. It doesn't get tired of reading your content. It's not like running a race. That's ridiculous. Honestly, Google's ingesting. It's a computer. It doesn't get tired. It's not like, oh God, how much? Oh God, they've updated everything. That's not how that works. Google's going to take the post. They're going to ingest the entire thing, and then they're going to make some decisions about ranking.
Right.
And they're going to treat it. I mean, they're going to treat it like new content. So you can update everything all at once. And if you want to update your whole site, I mean that's weird, but you can do it. It's not going to hurt Google. They're not going to get tired. So that's nuts.
I mean, and along those lines, Josh definitely has the opinion that if you're ranking well for something, don't touch it.
Yeah,
don't touch it.
Yeah, I made that mistake early on when I started doing SEO. I would read everything I could. This is back in 1983, and I was reading stuff, and I would change things to improve the SEO on it, and I would do things like change the URL or something like that. And now you tell me. You could have told me when I was 11, but and what would happen is these great ranks that I had would just disappear. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why. They weren't sites they weren't pages that were linked to. Nothing changed about it except the URL. I don't know why Google stopped liking it, but it ruined the ranking, just making that little change. So generally what I say is if you're ranking for something really well, and maybe there's something you don't love about the post, for the most part, just leave it.
Internalize it and move on.
Move on to the next thing.
Yeah, make more content. I personally think, if you're ranking okay for something and you want to raise it up, maybe updating is a good idea, making sure that there are links around to other things on your site.
I think you can always update the content on it and not hurt yourself too much, just as long as it's not a huge change. But like again, like if you're ranking for like these little, if you rank for cake, and you're number one, just don't touch it. Just kind of like let it, just like push it out there. Let it, even if it feels like it's a little bit of a booger, don't just let it sit there. Don't pick it. Just kind of like until someone maybe comes along and like gives you a better content and outranks you. Then maybe you can start looking at like changing things. But like only then.
Does that help?
Thank you. I love it when you disprove these weird myths going around.
Oh, they're just my opinions,
Picturing the 8-week schedule that you write on.
Oh God, that's exhausting, guys.
This day and then.
I feel like a lot of times people come up with this as a way to give you something to do because you paid them money.
I can do that. If you guys want to pay me money, I'll tell you all the things that are wrong with your posts. But like honestly, like that's why my mantra here is that your site ain't broke. Like you just need to write. Don't like get distracted with like big code updates all the time. Those are those are nice things to do. You can make your site better. You can make it prettier. But that's not gonna, like, if your goal is rankings, like go in with an understanding of what your goal is. If your goal is rankings, then there's really only one thing you can do. It's to write more, get more links, get more, put more content up. If your goal is like user interface, then that's a completely different goal, and you're going to want to like go design. But like go in with an understanding of what your actual intent is. Don't pay somebody for an audit because you want your rankings hugely to improve. Maybe do it because like you want to like have someone approve of the design, make sure that the design, you're going through a design change, you want to make sure that like it's got schema and stuff like that. That's the time to maybe do an audit, but not like when your site's just fine, Yeah. Next one.
Okay, so guys, I talked to Josh right before our beer break.
Don't tell them that.
Well, no.
Breaking the secret.
And actually, I'm glad we did that because it helped me dial in the question I actually
good,
had
okay.
even more than the one I asked you. So I'm looking at my categories, and my main question is, not my categories, I'm sorry, my menu bar.
Yeah.
And my main question is, do I want to try to max out the SEO, like all the characters, all the green lights on SEO on my About page and my Shop Kitchen Tools page and that type of thing? So my non-landing pages, more or less, because I'm not using those links as landing pages in my marketing and promotion.
Right.
I'm bringing people to the recipes themselves.
I think that depends on what you want those pages to rank for. So like for the most part, I think that your pages, those like individual pages, a lot of them are just kind of non-pages, right? Like you don't really need to rank for a disclaimer, right?
Exactly.
Maybe you want to. Like you're a lawyer, maybe you want to, but like most of you don't want to rank for a disclaimer. But like for example, I mean, what's your name?
Oh, Tracy.
Tracy?
Yeah.
Okay, so like maybe you want to rank on your name,
I mean, I'm the kitchen girl, by the way.
The kitchen girl. Okay, so I mean, like
not just Tracy.
Well, Tracy, the kitchen girl. Maybe you want to rank on your name. Maybe you like there's search that you want to control. Like I can give you an example with Alarm Grid. I really like controlling my reviews. We have really great reviews. If some Google's Alarm Grid reviews, we have great reviews. But I like to get them to that content quickly. So I actually have a page on the site that's Alarm Grid reviews, and I try to have that rank as high as possible for when someone searches Alarm Grid reviews.
We do the same thing on Mediavine.
Right. Not because I want them to like be lied to, but I want to show them very quickly
how to get to the information.
Right. Here's all the places you can go to see our great reviews.
You're creating a funnel.
Right. And
everybody
that's
here
dishonest.
understands funnel, viral funneling, right? Same thing.
So like for you, if you want to rank for your name, put your name in the About Me page. Don't say like About Me, like actually put your name there. And that's probably going to go a long way. You're going to probably have some really great rankings for your name, and you're going to control that search. That's going to be beautiful.
Right.
So that's how I would think about that. As to whether you want green lights on the Yoast stuff, again, that's going to be dependent on what those actually are. So like for example, when descriptions right now, I would go back to your top pages. I would do like a 300-word description there. Descriptions aren't a ranking signal, but they give you more real estate in the search engine results pages, which is SERPs. They give you more real estate there. That's going to translate into better click-throughs.
People are more likely to click on the things that take up more real estate on the page.
Lightning question. We have 1 minute.
Okay. All right, I just published my first, I think you would call it like a landing page style post.
Okay.
Where I chose a topic and it was like a pretty basic recipe. I gave like a step-by-step tutorial with pictures and everything. And I used Answer the Public to try to answer every question that anybody might have about this type of recipe. And at the end, I included a list of all the different other recipes on my site that were related. I had about I think it was probably 25 of them.
Wow.
Put it in a bulletized list. Is it okay to link to that many, or should I do less? And is it okay to just do it in a list form, or is it better for user experience if there's pictures for each one?
There are no hard and fast rules about this. I say with links, they need to be editorial. That is the most important thing you can do. Honestly, my favorite thing about links is when they're in text. I like them being surrounded by text. My personal opinion is I don't love bulleted lists of related content. You can do that. It's not hurting anything, particularly if they're editorial. But I generally like it to be contextual in there. Also, you should, consider strongly, if you're doing questions about recipes, you don't have to put those all on the same recipe page. You can split those out into individual posts. And there's going to be people searching those questions specifically. You're going to rank really well for those questions because those aren't things that people are generally trying to rank for, usually. Just those specific
Very
questions.
low-hanging fruit that you can go after. It doesn't take you, you've already written it.
Yeah.
So just move it to a new a post of its own and take it out of the one that it's in, but link to it from the one that it's in now.
Okay.
Right? But I will tell you that from a food fanatic perspective, that Eric would always prefer that I put any internal links in actual editorial content.
Okay.
Right? So it doesn't hurt anything. It doesn't hurt anything. I see we have 30 seconds.
No, we're
over. Oh,
yeah.
crap. Okay. It doesn't hurt anything, but it's better.
Right.
It's better to be in content.
So but that is it. I think, thank you so much for listening to The Theory of Content.
Yes. Thank you, guys.
If you liked what you heard, go to iTunes and, as the kids say, smash that 5-star button. We absolutely love those. Say something nice about us or me, but still 5 stars. We really appreciate you guys all coming, and thank you so much for Mediavine and Google for hosting this absolutely wonderful conference.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.